Today, I want to talk about being perceived as worse than I am, or worse than my intentions are, how that feels, and how I've also encountered it the other way, in which I've assumed, due to my own perceptions of myself, unintentionally assume that the other person has worse intentions than they have towards me. And how, all in all, this is just like not a great way to live my life, I guess. Yeah. So let me just talk about what happened. I had the realization, I think, on one of my solo trips to Korea. So if you don't know, I tend to be a bit pessimistic, and I think what comes more easily, or what is familiar to me, is to kind of assume that I am, not to the extent of like being a burden, but I am a bit like, my needs will create trouble for other people, I think would be a more accurate way of putting it. So I don't think this is inherently true, but I do know that I tend to slip into this way of thinking. And the thing that really snapped me out of it, or like the thing that really reminded me to not think this, that to know that this is not a helpful way of thinking, was really what happened when I was in Korea on a solo trip. So when I was in Korea on a solo trip, I can't really speak very good Korean. I can sort of read and vaguely understand what's going on, but I can't really speak it very well. So when I do order things, I do it in kind of like singular words. So I'll be like, actually, this is kind of the same thing that I do. Even in English, sometimes I think, because I don't always form full sentences in my head. So sometimes I'll just be like, like, I don't know, maybe like pork soup, one, please. Something like that, right, in Korean. And I feel bad for the people that I interact with that I kind of speak this way, which, by the way, like, I don't have to feel exceptionally bad about. Like, I am trying to the best that I can to communicate in a way that is, gets the point across, get my meal ordered, things like that, right? But I think it comes very easily to me, or it feels familiar to me, to be kind of overly apologetic for things, which I think is, quite a common thing that a lot of people feel. And so when I was in Korea, I was going around by myself, ordering stuff by myself, and then just accumulatively feeling worse and worse about the fact that I can't really speak to other people, and that, like, I felt bad about being a burden to these people. But really, all of that was in my head, right? And then I think this was like towards the middle end of the trip, where I realized, I was thinking, why do I assume that people will see me as a burden? Because, like, my own questionable negative self-worth thoughts aside, right, it's not very nice to think that other people have such ill will towards a random stranger. Like, and especially I think when the people at the diners or cafes that I go to are like smiling at me, doing their best to communicate with me in a polite and pleasant way, I felt bad on top of regular feeling bad about being a burden. I felt bad that I was assuming poorly of them, and then that's, when I sorted all those feelings out, that's when I realized it's not a very helpful way to live your life, or to think of either yourself or other people that way, because it kind of just perpetuates it's kind of like whatever you think you're right. So it's like, if I think poorly of my own myself if I think like I'm being I'm being troublesome, or like I'm going around causing trouble for people just by having needs, trying to buy food, or like trying to move around in space. If I think that of like myself doing regular things that a human needs to do, um, then I am also inherently assuming that other people have such negative perceptions of me when they may not in fact have them. But because when they interact with me, they can probably sense that I have such a thinking of them, and that could lead to a case where even if they don't have such negative intentions, that they might start to feel bad or resentful that I think they have such bad intentions, which then makes it easier for them to indeed have such bad intentions, if that makes sense. So the way I thought about it is through another case in the past, which is a little bit extreme, but in that particular scenario, I was the one whose intentions, whose neutral or even positive intentions were misunderstood to be negative. So the person that I was dating at the time was a very pessimistic person, and in that particular period especially, they were very pessimistic. And so what happened was, there was a period in which they suddenly kind of acted more negatively towards me, and to me that was very uncalled for. Like I don't know what I did differently. Like, I didn't do anything differently. Why are you acting as if I've wronged you, or as if I've done something wrong? So then I was trying to figure out what happened, and when I finally managed to get them to open up and answer that question, the reply honestly kind of shocked me in a bad way. So their answer was that they had a dream in which they talked to me about something that was on their mind. I can't remember what it was. And then the dream version of me reacted to them negatively. And they felt very hurt by that. And after they woke up, they ascribed the dream version of me, like all the negative intentions and the bad response, to actual me. And as a result, the hurt that they felt sort of carried over from a version of me that exists in their head, actually, because it's their dream, right, onto me. So when I heard all of that, I was like, that's ridiculous. Like, I didn't do any of the things that the dream version of me did in your dreams, so why are you blaming me for what happened there? But I think maybe because this example is so ridiculous, and you know, I really tried it. I really genuinely had no like bad intentions. Like, this was a person that I was dating. I was mostly in a positive space, if not neutral, towards most of the stuff, and then to be kind of, I guess, wrongly ascribed bad intentions due to whatever they thought of in their dreams, or whatever they thought of in their dreams felt very ridiculous to me. And in a way, maybe not to the same extreme, that was kind of what I was doing to all the people that I was meeting in Korea when I was on my solo trip, feeling like, me trying to order food was a burden, me taking up space walking down the subway, not knowing which side to stand, and kind of like slowing down the flow is a burden. Like, I'm not saying any of these things are right or wrong necessarily, but I think most people are kind enough and compassionate enough to give people grace, to learn, especially when they see that it's somebody who maybe hasn't encountered this situation before and is trying their best. Like, I think it's a much kinder thing to do to assume that people are trying their best, and I think most people do this. So to kind of use my own either negative self-talk to then ascribe the negativity within myself to other people, that's kinda not great, and I guess it really creates a self-fulfilling prophecy for yourself. So anyway, with ever since that realization in Korea, and also kind of, I guess, processing how really ridiculous that interaction with that ex was, every time I catch myself having kind of like negative self-talk, sometimes it's hard for me to just be like, you know what, no, I'm not being a burden, because it is true that maybe sometimes my actions are annoying in that they create more trouble for other people. Like, surely some of the cases, like out of everything that happens, that would be some of the cases. Just like there would be some cases in which the actions I do would just be like, neutral, or maybe even just like not really something that annoys people at all. But I think it is so much more helpful to think of it as, I think the way I can see other people having, the way I assume other people would be kind and gentle and compassionate towards somebody doing something new or unfamiliar and give them grace, I think it's a much easier way to live if I just assume that everybody else is also able to see that I am someone who is trying and to give me grace. So, yeah. I guess what I'm saying is really just sometimes the positive self-talk within your own head really just creates that self-fulfilling prophecy. So it's kind of like the more negative stuff you think about yourself, the more it projects out into other people, which then comes back to you. And the more you can try to think of it in a more gentler, kinder, compassionate way towards yourself, it kind of also reflects onto other people, who can then reflect that back onto you. I hope that made sense. It's kind of just mainly two stories, I guess. So, yeah. That's what I wanted to talk about. That's what I wanted to talk about in this video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.